Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Hey everybody, welcome back and thank you so much for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast. Mariano Alvarez here with Brent Labrada and yet another very special guest that we'll be announcing in just a second. But first, we do want to let you guys know that you can find us on all major social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all by searching Dog Trainers Podcast as all one word, Dog Trainers Podcast. You can also find us on all major podcast platforms. And we want to give a quick shout out to those cities that have been showing us love with our latest episode with Larry Crone. Larry was an awesome guest, you guys, and we thank you so much for listening. We thank you so much for the questions that you sent us. And we want to give a shout out to Columbus, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, Dublin, Leinster, and Ireland, and Sheffield, England. Thank you guys so much. And with that, over to you, man.
What's up, guys? It's Brent with the Dog Trainers Podcast. As Mariano said, we have an amazing special guest. Those of you guys who follow us on Instagram, you guys already know who it is. There was a huge spoiler alert. You guys made a huge stink about not knowing who it is that we are interviewing. So from this point on, we are now going to let you guys know who we're interviewing. We were always trying to keep it a surprise. But if you guys were watching us on Instagram, you guys know that today's very, very special guest is Mr. Blake Rodriguez. How are you, my friend?
Not bad. Thank you for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it.
No, of course. It's our pleasure. And thank you so much for it's an honor, really, just being on to have a fellow great dog trainer on board. Some of you guys already follow him on Instagram, but if you guys don't follow him, you guys can go ahead and check him out at Dream Come True Canine. And you guys could also follow his website, www.dctk9, dreamcometruecanine.com. All in letters. And then you guys can also check out some of his contributions to the Consider the Dog platform by our buddy Tyler Muto. And he has a lot of content on there. I've actually learned a couple things myself watching some of your content, Blake. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, man. So let's go ahead and jump off this podcast. Very similarly, let's tell people who are not familiar with you what it is you do and who the hell you are.
Sounds good. Well, I'm a dog trainer, and a lot of people ask, well, how the hell did you get into that? It's interesting. I really think that my story is similar to a lot of people in general. Is I had a great dog, but and everybody, that's like the recurring trend. That's the recurring theme for everybody. And it's like, oh, my dog is so great, but, and then those buts will be really mild. Those buts here, it can be like, but he chases squirrels, but he's not good.
But he killed the cat.
Yeah, but he killed the cat, but he doesn't get along with people, and he's only friends with our family.
Yeah.
There's always a but. I had a dog in college, and even before that, my roommate's dog, but I had a dog in school, and he was a great dog, but. And we had a lot of butts. And the thing that was really interesting for me was I didn't have an excuse like a lot of people. Technically, I guess you can qualify him a rescue because he was kind of a one-night stand litter in upstate New York in the middle of nowhere. The mother abandoned him and the litter, and he was like living under the stairs. So the neighbor spoke to my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. He was like, listen, we have these pups. We sold a couple. Some died. We have some, you can take 1, 2, as many as you want. So Lindsay went ahead and took him, and he was like really young. Like the mother wasn't feeding him or anything. He was like 5 weeks old, really, really young. And we rescued him, but we didn't have the rescue backstory the way that everybody else did. So like any behavior that I was dealing with, struggling with, or, struggling to teach, whatever the case is in that situation, I had no excuse. I didn't have the backstory of like, he was a Hurricane Katrina dog, or he had been attacked by another dog, or this, that, or the third. There was no excuse. So I either did something that contributed to my struggle, or I wasn't doing something that was contributing to my success in what I was trying to teach. So that kind of really inspired and motivated me to say, okay, there's a way to fix this. There has to be a way. And that led to me walking dogs in New York City. I guess I'll jump into the long story now, because that's where we're headed.
No,
anyway.
Please, we want the long story on the Dog Trainers Podcast.
This makes sense. So I had this dog who was great, and I ended up leaving school, and now I had a dog in New York City. Very, very different environment from where I went to school, upstate New York, SUNY Potsdam. It's like, it is New York, but it's like 6.5 hours from New York City. So it is a very different New York than New York City.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I had this dog and he was great, but now I had him in New York, the concrete jungle, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I started fixing the butts. And along the journey of fixing the butts, I had a great idea to basically make money doing what I was going to do anyway.
Nice.
And it was like, listen, if I have to take my dog to the dog park, or I have to walk, I have to do this. People have 9-to-5 jobs. What if I can get paid to take their dog? Now I could take their dog to the dog park and my dog has like company. So I'm gonna be outside, my dog's gonna get fulfilled, he's gonna have an outlet, but I can make money doing it.
Right.
That led to me learning that walking into someone's apartment and picking up dogs, trying to grab them, it's not as easy as you think.
As you think, yep.
So I learned a lot, and I learned that as a dog walker, I needed to become a dog trainer, essentially.
Right.
I learned a lot through trial and error, still continue to do so till this day, and then started training dogs because I was good at it, even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing. That started the journey of, okay, let me start learning about what I am doing, which brings me to where I am today. That is the long-winded version of answering your question.
No, I love that.
I have a 2-floor dog training facility in New York City, and you guys are the first to hear this news. We're actually expanding to an additional facility down the block.
That's awesome, man.
Dope. Congratulations. That's so cool.
Thank you. We have 2 locations. We're in the middle of working out this lease right now, but good friends with the landlords and everything. So
it should work out.
Yeah, exactly. It should work out. It should work out. We should be good to go to get the keys in April, have a month to kind of spruce the place up. And then by May, we'll have one location that is focusing exclusively on board and trains and training. And then another facility that is for exclusive services, which is our train and play, which is kind of like our version of daycare.
Yep.
And our boarding outside of board and train. That's only the dogs that we've worked with and done some type of training with. They don't have to be perfect. I just have to know you, know your dog, know that we're on the same page, and really, really exciting news.
No, I love that. I love because we at my company we have like a we only board dogs we've trained kind of thing.
Same.
Because we're smaller. We're smaller, definitely not 2 facilities yet, which we'll talk about. But yeah, there's definitely a huge benefit to that, right?
Absolutely. You know what's crazy too is I think that from the owner's perspective, they really enjoy that. You know what's crazy, you guys, is when I first moved here. So to give you some backstory, Blake, and then we'll let you continue. Sorry, brother. Brent lives in LA. I used to live in LA. That's how we know each other. We used to work together. And I live now in Phoenix, Arizona. I've lived here for close to 2 years. Next month will be 2 years. And when I moved here, of course, you know, you uproot yourself from state to state. You don't have your client base anymore. So I started over in a sense, but not really. I mean, I knew what I was doing at that point. I just had to start over with the clients. So it was a quicker process. But with that being said, I was nervous. Like, how do you compete with this kennel that can take in this many dogs and they're booked out through September and so on, until I realized it was an edge for me because I was able to just kind of adjust my website around to be like, hey, listen, guys, so here in my home, we focus on a more individual, a more boutique style of training. And like people really are into that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's so amazing that you're able to separate your training facility. You have a training center, and then you have a kind of like a more daily use type of services. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's smart. Yeah.
You know what happened is when we first got the facility, it was fantastic because I started training out of my apartment in New York City. And for those of you that are not familiar with it, you have someone that lives above you, beneath you, to the left of you, to the right of you. It's a very different world. And I started doing board and trains out of my apartment.
Yep, me too.
My neighbors liked me. They loved me. I was doing good. I got really good at like getting results right away
and keeping them quiet,
which has its pros and cons. That's obviously something that we can sort of jump into. And it was an approach that taught me a lot. But as time went on, I was like, all right, I'm going to need an actual facility. And when I got the facility, it was great. It was like, wow, we're not going to outgrow this place. This is going to be fantastic. It got to the point where we sort of outgrew it. And although we're doing a really good job now, one of the main reasons why I'm looking to take on additional rent in New York City for this space is not because we're going to be making that much more money. If we're going to be making money at all, we're going to keep the number of boarding trains the same. It's literally just to give the dogs more. Because we're limited to the space that we have. And it's like, we're doing good work, but I think we could do better.
Okay.
So that's where we are.
That's amazing. And it's about the quality of the work. It's about the quality of care. It's about,
It does matter. It does matter.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
trying to get better and trying to
100%. Because you hear all these horror stories of like that board and train facility that has crates stacked on top of each other, and it's noisy and it's smelly and it's dirty, and it gets to this point where you're like, your standard has to be here, and if it's down
dude,
here, the dogs will show it. The dogs
and
will show it.
and it's been really annoying lately, and this is going to kind of lead into my next question is one thing that really bothers me, Blake, maybe you've been aware of this kind of thing too, is it seems lately like there's a push of dog training that's very like advertiser friendly. Like any dog, 2 weeks, any you know what I mean? Like cookie cutter type. I guarantee you any dog off leash in 2 weeks, period. When that's just not the reality. And you know, we don't name and slam people and stuff like that here. But with that being said, like here in the area, when I got here a couple of years ago, I was new. I didn't have any clients, so I applied at different kennels, and I got a job at a kennel while I established myself. And I met a couple people who ran a similar type program like that. And just after hearing more about the program, I'm like, man, really? Like, what if the dog, XYZ? What if this or that? And I thought it was strange that there is no like nuance. So I guess my question to you then is really being inspired by the way that you're willing to take on the extra expense just to give the dogs more to really make sure that your service is the best it can possibly be. Who or what influenced that sort of mindset?
That's a great question. At the end of the day, when you're in it for the dogs and you actually care about them, the money's going to come. Like
Right.
Obviously this is a career. It's not a hobby. So you want to make money doing it, but
Right.
you want to be able to give the dogs more. You want to be able to help them. So one of the things like for me is like I mentioned before, I got really good at like doing things quickly, but I also started realizing that it went way beyond what I can get with a dog. Like in some cases within 24 hours, if a dog is with me, like we're going to see a very different dog, and that's great. And that's good for video. And that's,
Right.
that's all fantastic, but it doesn't necessarily translate or transfer over to the client.
Right.
So that's not to say that I need to have a dog, or I want to have a dog for a year. And then after I have a dog for a year, here's your dog, you'll never have issues.
Mhm.
But if you could think of us as trainers, as dancing teachers,
Mhm.
Dancing with the Stars or something. If you look at Dancing with the Stars, you guys ever see that show?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With Dancing with the Stars, you have a celebrity or somewhat of a celebrity
Right.
with a professional.
Right.
Right.
And you still see how difficult it is to
Right.
teach these people how to dance.
Yep.
Even some people that have like
Performance experience.
Backstreet Boys performance backgrounds, it is a challenge.
Right.
But they have a partner who can dance.
Right.
I think the benefit of our training, whether it's private sessions, especially if it's a board and train, is my goal is how do I give this human
Mhm.
that in most situations doesn't have the ability to dance?
Mhm.
How do I give them the best possibility or the best shot at being successful with doing that? I have to give them a partner that knows how to dance.
Right.
So that's our job with the dog is, listen, we're going to get you to as good of a place as possible because we know it's still just a piece of the puzzle. It's an end piece.
Mhm.
It's a very important piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but it's not the full puzzle. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, that's the inspiration right there. It's like, how do you get things better? So if you look at these 2 weeks, these 1 weeks, 24 hours, this and that, I know you can get progress within that, but what about the lasting results?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really most of the inspiration. So if you look at board and trains, it's 3, 6, 8 week
Well,
program.
that's a very cool idea you're bringing up. So we just had Larry Crone on before you, and Larry Crone was talking about, he goes, the big thing a lot of dog trainers are missing are a dog might come into a board and train and they might do excellent under the structure of that system. And as soon as the dogs go back home, obviously because things are not as regimented or as structured, naturally there's some fall off, right? The dog starts falling off. And it's because, every day the trainer would play tug and every day the trainer would ask commands, or every day the trainer would do work on impulse control, but that's not how real life works with the average dog owner. So he was saying, he goes, one of the big things that I focus on is I like to make sure that I know the family and I work on things that I know they're going to be able to do. And I make sure that the dog's results and structure revolves around those things versus telling somebody you gotta jog, you gotta run 2 miles a day with this dog, or you gotta constantly you gotta buy one of those treadmills and put the dog on the treadmill, or and that's one of the big things. What I've noticed is when I was a younger dog trainer, I would teach people how I would train their dog, and I would try and make them like me, versus customizing a program, or at least coming up with resources where we could say, okay, for person A, there's this style. For person B, there's this D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and have slightly different approaches that can yield similar results and same results. And I think that just kind of comes with the mastery of the craft, right? You run into a brick wall and then you go, how can I help this person? And then you figure out, okay, what service could I provide?
How do you make it work for them? Yeah. And shout out to Larry. I love Larry. I really think he's doing a fantastic job, not only with dogs, but getting material out and just at the end of the day, helping people. Yeah. And also striving to continue to get better, even though he's already good at what he's doing. I think that's something that's important for all of us to strive for.
Oh, 100%. And I think if there's anything that we could try and offer as a podcast is, again, these conversations, right? Like it's interesting because, they're obviously people we looked up to, right? And it's weird, right? Like, who was it? I forget who said it, but it's like, just because you have a platform, people all of a sudden look you on this pedestal.
Yeah, it's like this weird Hollywood effect. Like when we had, I'm trying to think of who the guest was that they jumped on with us and they were like, wow, guys. And we're like, what? It's thanks, I guess.
And we're just like, we just started this a year ago. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's weird. But anyways, and I bring that up because, there are people with clout that deserve it. They've been busting their ass. They've been innovative. They've been, putting work in. We've been putting our work in. I've been doing this 13 years now. Mariano, like 9-10 years now. Yep. And it's like, but that's the point I'm trying to make is, like, at some point you stay in the game long enough where you're working, you're developing skill, and you just keep your head down and you're working. And it gets to this point where now people start to notice, like, hey, you're a different level than I am, or, and so a question I have for you is, obviously we all started off as scrubs at some point, right? Who were some of the people that you looked up to when you were starting dog training and you were that dog walker being like, who the fuck do I learn from? Who were those people that you were like, I study blank, I read this, I do that? Please let us know.
That's a good question. And it goes beyond just dog trainers. At the time that I started, this is a little bit weird, and you guys will understand this, but at the time that I started, it's gonna make me seem old. Facebook wasn't really a thing.
Right.
YouTube was still just sort of becoming a thing. Like Tyler and I met.
Like 2007, 2008.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Where I was like, I would look up like NYC, like dog training, or at New York dog training, and he would pop up. I was like, let me watch this video. And like, he was one of the first people that, showed some of the work. It wasn't just before or after. It was shows like, okay, I think this guy actually knows what he's doing. This is interesting. And if I'm doing some stuff that a lot of things I'm just winging, and some of it is working, some of it is not, you're figuring it out. If I'm doing a routine 20 things with every single dog, let's say, I know that I'm getting results, but I technically don't know out of those 20 things, what is it that's really working? Do I only need to be doing 5? Do I only need to be doing 10? So I started watching him. Prior to watching him, and I know people have mixed feelings about him. Like, Caesar was the man. He was the only guy on television.
Yeah.
He was doing this stuff. It was incredible. Like, it's just incredible. So I was watching that. I was trying to replicate that. I was learning stuff. I was learning what worked, what didn't work, all of these things. So those were like the two major influences early on. And then I also got connected to Sherry Lucas and Brian Agnew through them, and then started attending seminars like after that with various different people, and benefited from everybody,